Welcome to Google. I'm super excited to be here and super excited to welcome you here in Google. And I'm here to tell you a bit more about how we're building for more immersive virtual reality. So I was born and raised in China, in a city called Chengdu. And my mom used to work for the state railway company. So what that means is when I was little and I could travel for almost free, I traveled with her on many train trips all across the country. So I guess that's when the travel bugs started to grow in me. And I went to Hong Kong for university. I attended this beautiful school called the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. You can see a picture here on the screen. That's the second one. So the campus sits right next to the ocean. It has its own pier, had its own beach. It was gorgeous. The experience in Hong Kong not only gave me the good foundation of mathematics and computer science, it also opened the door for me, which has led to the wider world. So during my undergrad, I spent a whole year, literally a whole year, studying, working, and traveling in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and in continental Europe. During that time, I went to Northwestern University near Chicago, and that's where I met my husband. After undergrad, I moved to Switzerland. I went to ETH Zurich and spent 3 years there studying computer science. And I loved every minute of it. And at the end of 2012, I moved here to the Bay Area and has been working at Google for almost 4 years now. So I love traveling. I love cooking. I love the outdoors. And I also love New York. I just returned from a 6.5-week trip with my husband across South America. There have been so many places I've been that there's just beautiful nature, amazing wildlife, and many extraordinary cultures. So along our trip, there have been many times that I would stop at a point and tell my husband that this is gorgeous here. I wish our family could be here. Or I wish our friends could see this. Or I just wish that people could experience what I'm experiencing at that moment, even though they were not physically there. So that is what has led me to virtual reality. The power of virtual reality lies in that everyone could travel as far as their imagination takes them. The constraints in the real world will no longer be the limiting factor of what you can experience in virtual reality. And I find that super exciting. I think there's so much more we can do to not just organize the world's information, but to gather the world's experiences and make them universally accessible and useful. So let me tell you a bit more about Google's story in virtual reality. Our journey started with Google Cardboard in 2014, and that was a 20% project. What that means was a bunch of us, like around 15, 20 people. I was lucky to be part of it. We spent 20% of our time, a few months, and put together Google Cardboard. It was announced and launched on Google I/O 2014. And after the initial success, the group of us actually banded together and started the VR team at Google. It has been more than 2 years since then. And since then, we have launched Google Cardboard V2, which was 2015. And last year, we announced the much improved Daydream View and controller system. So a lot of what we do in the VR team at Google is focusing on how do we make virtual reality more accessible to more people? How do we make it easier for people to share this experience? And one central question leading that way is actually what makes good VR. Is it more resolution on the screen? Is it a wider field of view? Is it maybe haptics feedback? Or is it like spatial audio that will go along with the visuals? And the answer is all of them. All of them are very important. So here's actually 3 examples of the good elements that will make for immersive VR. The first one is probably the most known one. That is called motion to photon latency. What that means is a time lag between the moment I turn my head to the moment the screen updates to reflect the new viewport. There have been numerous studies to suggest that if the time lag is too long, this may cause nausea, and this may cause motion sickness. And we don't want that to happen to any of our users. And the second one is also very interesting. The second one means the representation of your body in virtual reality should match the pose of your body in the real reality. So it's a very interesting experiment. You can close your eyes, and you can try to touch your nose with one of your fingers, and you can still do it. What that means is our brain knows approximately where our body parts is, even if our eyes are shut. And what that implies in virtual reality is we need to render, for example, your hands in the approximately correct location of where your hands really are in the real reality. And then the last thing is interaction. That is probably the most interesting of all here. That means the ability of users to actually make changes to the virtual reality environment and let the environment respond to you. That will elevate the user's feeling to be an observer in the virtual reality environment to a participant in the environment. So I had that experience that once I was watching a movie in virtual reality, and actually was kind of a game setting. And there was a robot dog that was coming to me in VR. And of course, it's not a real dog. And I looked at the dog, and the dog looked back at me into my eyes. And I was like, wow, I was really there. So that is what makes VR experience magical. So the Google Daydream team has been working towards building all these elements to make VR great, to make VR a more immersive environment. I'd like to tell you a bit more about what my team is working on. So after observing many people spending time in virtual reality, sometimes even spending their first ever time in virtual reality, one question popped up more often than the others. The question is, where are my hands? We've seen many people the first ever time they put on a headset, they will raise up their hands. They'll be like, oh, I can't see my hands. Where are my hands? Where am I? And this is such an important question because hands are our primary interaction tools in the real reality. And not being able to see them or use them is disorienting and sometimes even confusing. And on the contrary, if we somehow to start visualize the hands in VR, the power is just magical. So there was once I was trying a VR experience. There was a virtual fireplace, and I kind of put out my hand to be right above the fire, and I start to feel warmth in my hands, even though there's no real fireplace below my hand. And many people reported the same thing. So the group of us set out to answer this question. How do we bring hands to VR? This is a very hard question, because from an image-based approach, we can collect a number of images and videos of hand poses and movement. But if you look at your hands, there's a lot of self-occlusion, there's a lot of articulation. And if you compare your hands with your neighbor's hands, you may notice that the size and the shape vary dramatically. That means traditional computer vision approaches normally don't work very well here. But fortunately, the recent advancement in deep neural networks provided us with a new way. The power of neural networks is that it can learn the important features, and then the depth of a neural network means that it can model very complex functions. And therefore, the neural networks, once trained, they have a good tendency to be generalized very well across a wide range of test data. So we have built and trained a neural network with TensorFlow, and you can see a sneak peek of what it can do on the animated images on the right. So you can see that not only can you see your hands, we can track key points, therefore you can draw on the screen, and you can interact with UI elements. And I'm super excited that the TensorFlow team is here today as well, and they will give a workshop this afternoon. And if you're interested in machine learning or artificial intelligence, they also have great documentation online, and I'll suggest you to check it out. So what would you do with that? What would you do with having your hands in VR? I personally believe that it can enable a number of creative applications. For example, you can paint, you can sculpt, you can make potteries, but it can also give you superpowers. Perhaps all of us can be Yoda in VR with our own virtual superpowers. So the question is, what would you do? What would you like to see in virtual reality? I'm super proud to be here to actually tell you the hard work done by these people. What I just told you is not my accomplishment, but the accomplishment of the whole team. I'm super honored to be working alongside with these very talented people. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for being here, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.